Oke, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Let me introduce myself. My name is Hanifan Akila, and here in this occasion, I'd like to present about principles for navigating big debt crisis for part 3 with the title of Compendium of 48 Case Studies. But here I'd like to explain just the 12 case of the studies and the rest will be explained by my friends. Okay, so for the first is Okay, so for USA, in 1926 until 1936, it's around 10 years. So this about the explosive economic growth and debt accumulations, which led to the 1929 stock market crash. And in USA, entered the Great Depression after the crash, and which was characterized by a precipitous drop in GDP, skyrocketing unemployment, and a debt problem made worse by deflation. The debt load in relation to GDP grew worse despite efforts to control the downturn until 1933. And by taking these steps, the economy was progressively stabilized and prepared for the recovery. Okay, so this one is for the first case, and I'll explain the 11 rest case. So the next is about the UK. So in 1927 until 1936, or around 9 years, so the UK or United Kingdom scenario explains how the UK faced a debt crisis following the 1929 US stock market crash. So the ensuing slump resulted in higher unemployment, a 61% reduction in stock prices, and a 10% decline in GDP. So in response, the UK depreciated its currency, cut interest rates, and abandoned the gold standard in 1931. The UK was able to lower its debt because to this beautiful deleveraging process, which was characterized by fiscal restraint and modest inflation. Third one is the Japan from 1925 and 1936. In Japan entered the period with significant debt but no major economic bubble. However, it was vulnerable due to its high debt levels when the 1929 global crash struck, and Japan faced a severe economic downturn with the GDP declining by 4% and the stocks by 47%, putting pressure on its financial institutions. And then in 1931, Japan devalued its currency, then implemented fiscal and monetary stimulus. This strategy will allow Japan to stabilize and reduce its debt to GDP ratio and achieving a beautiful deleveraging as real growth returned and debt burdens eased. The fourth is France in 1926 till 1938, or around 12 years. France saw bubble driven by economic growth and high equity returns, with debt decreasing slightly to 205%, or 2.05 of GDP. However, in 1929, the Great Depression triggered a severe downturn. In France, the GDP dropped by 70% and the stock prices fell by 57%. It's quite big number, okay, with minimal debt reduction due to deflation and economic contraction. And then in 1936, France left the gold standard, which spurred the nominal growth, reduced debt ratios, and then the 1938, France stabilized the economy. Then the second UK is, and then UK in 1941 till 1967. So it's while the war, the UK took a took on substantial debt, primarily domestically held, to fund its war efforts. Post-war, the economy faced a recession as it transitioned from wartime production, with GDP falling and debt to GDP ratios rising due to high government spending. And then in 1947, or 20 years before the last period of 1967, the UK devalued its currency and implemented stimulative policies, including low interest rates and controlled inflation. By the late of 1950s, these measures contributed to a beautiful deleveraging, where the economic growth outpaced interest costs, ultimately stabilizing by the UK's economy. Then the second period of USA in 1943 until 1951, or only around 7 years. It's around 8 years. During World War II, the US took on substantial debt to fund the war, raising its debt to GDP ratio to 150%. The debt was largely domestically held and manageable due to wartime production and high growth. And then after the war ended, the GDP declining by 13% as the country transitioned away from the war production. However, the government policies, including the low interest rates and inflation controls, fostered the nominal growth, in which reduced the debt to GDP ratio. Then, this period marked as a beautiful deleveraging as the economy gradually stabilized and unemployment dropped. And then the next is about Norway in 1984 and 1990 until 1996. It's a bubble phase from 1984 to 1987 was driven by high asset returns and strong economic growth, with debt reaching 211% or more than 100% of GDP. This unsustainable growth led to an ugly deleveraging from 1987 to 1992, which caused a 4% drop in GDP and a 38% fall in home prices. And Norway's government took steps to stabilize the economy, like the bank nationalizations and structural reforms. And 1992, the expansionary monetary policies helped initiate a recovery. Or next is Finland, 1987 until 2001 or 2001. Between 1987 and 1989, Finland saw strong economic growth and asset price increases, and leading to a bubble phase with debt reaching 272% of GDP. And however, the bubble burst in 1989, initiating a severe recession. And this beautiful deleveraging led to recovery by the early 2000s. Then the next is Sweden, 1987 till 2000s. Sweden underwent significant changes, transitioning from a more traditional welfare state model to a market-oriented economy. The country faced challenges like high employment, inflation, and a banking crisis in the early 1990s, in which prompted major economic reforms. Then, the period was marked by progressive social policies, strong environmental movements, and ongoing efforts to balance economic efficiency with social welfare. And Sweden's commit to modernization while maintaining its social democratic ideals. For the next is Japan in 1987 till 2017. Japan saw many changes in leadership, but the ruling Liberal Democratic Party stayed in power based on the political sides. The country also faced challenges like an aging population and low birth rates. And then the 2011 earthquake, tsunami, and nuclear disaster were significant events that led to changes in energy policy and disaster preparedness. Japan continued to adapt to both internal issues and global changes during this time. And the next is USA in 2004 and 2004 and the 2014. So this country faced the 2008 financial crisis, which caused a severe recession. And Barack Obama was elected president in 2008, becoming the first African American president and introduced major changes like the Affordable Care Act, or we called it as Obamacare. The US also continued wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Then the period ended with a slow economic recovery, but inequality and political divisions remain challenges. So the additional is with socially, with there were changes in culture attitudes like the progress of LGBTQ plus rights and ongoing discussions about gun control. It's kind of the freedom, like freely cultural. And then the last one is in Austria for the year is start from 2005 until 2017. The country saw a rise in right-wing politics with the Freedom Party gaining influence, partly due to concerns over immigrations and the European Union. Austria also focused on the environmental issues and renewable energy in 2017. The country shifted towards more conservative and nationalist policies with the election of right-wing government. Thank you. That's all for me. And I have explained about the 12 first cases, and then the next will be explained by Nashwa, Jihan, and Nindi. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله